President Buhari signs 21.8 trillion naira budget for 2023.
So much has been done under the able leadership of President Muhammadu Buhari to ensure that our roads are safe.
Secretary to the Government of the Federation decorates Corps Marshal of the Federal Road Safety Corps.
There is need to give what we call peculiar allowance to cushion the effect of this rising cost of living.
Federal government to increase allowances of federal civil servants due to current economic realities.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss 2023 expectations for the economic sector.
All right, we'll keep talking about 2022 for some time to come because it was quite a remarkable year. Now, in the area of economy, activity in most major economies slowed down in 2022. That's amidst high inflation and, of course, with central banks, global central banks, shifting towards contractionary monetary policies, and most of them attributed to the Russia-Ukraine war.
Now, Nigeria's economic growth slowed down behind declining oil output and moderating non-oil activity. And the real gross domestic product, GDP, rose by 3.1% year-on-year in the first 3 quarters of the outgone year, 2022, and with little more than the annual population growth of 2.6%.
All right, so talking about our growth performance and fiscal external buffers, of course, decoupled from high oil prices and macroeconomic vulnerabilities, also increased inflation, surging to 21.1% year-on-year in October last year, and pushing as many as 5 million more Nigerians into the poverty bracket since the start of last year.
Yeah, clear indeed. And you may recall that fiscal pressures intensified and exacerbated by soaring costs of petrol subsidy. Despite high oil export revenues, official reserves fell as well, and the currency market was distorted, undermining the business environment and investment. And moving into 2023, growth in most regions is expected to weaken further, and uncertainty regarding the outlook remains elevated, partly because of key unknowns such as future developments related to the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Of course, we keep talking about Russia and the Ukrainian issue. There were also external global shocks that affected world economies. But President Buhari agrees that, all of those, I'll just go back to the President Buhari signing of the budget, which of course we all saw yesterday. It became an act. That's the 2023 appropriation bill. Now, the 8th and final annual budget of his administration also, along with the 22 supplementary appropriation bill. Now, principally to enable government to respond to several issues that caused havoc, the floods and its impact on infrastructure and agricultural sectors.
All right, now the president mentioned in his presentation that early passage of the budget proposal is critical to ensure effective delivery of legacy projects of his administration, as well as smooth transition program and effective takeoff of the incoming administration.
Okay, so the 2023 budget provides for aggregate expenditure of 21.83 trillion naira, an increase of about 1.32 trillion naira over the initial executive proposal, which was a total expenditure of 20.51 trillion. And Kieran, just to add that while also signing the law, the bill into law yesterday, President Buhari was also emphatic on three core areas: implementation, ensuring that the envelope was used properly for a free and fair election.
Yes, what has been the bane of development in this country has been the poor implementation of budgetary allocations over the years. But of course, we're going to delve into all that, as we make progress into this program. But according to President Buhari, the budget was designed to promote social inclusion and strengthen the resilience of the economy, and also adequate provisions made for the successful conduct of the forthcoming general elections.
All right, so the president agrees that these are challenging times worldwide, not just in our country, but he commends the continued resilience, understanding of Nigerians in the face of current economic realities, and therefore urges, as I said earlier on, speedy consideration and approval of the plan for assent into law.
Now, what are these critical measures government has put in place aimed at improving the Nigerian business environment? How will these measures enhance the welfare of Nigerians? How will they translate to achieving sustainable economic development, and of course over the medium and long term? These are some of the issues we shall be interrogating as we engage our guests later on the program. Of course, the topic is on the expectations of the economic sector in 2023. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria. My name is Kirian Umayo. Thank you for joining us.
And I'm Claire Adilabu Abdulrazak. Thank you also for joining us on Good Morning Nigeria this Wednesday. And it's live on the network service of the NTA. As usual, we'll bring you our complimentary segments. The news highlights of the morning news will be coming your way shortly. And thereafter we'll be taking the business news, and newspaper review will come up much later. So let's move on now to the newsroom where Musbah and Wahab. Musbah, good morning.
Very good morning, Claire and Kirian. The news. President Muhammadu Buhari says as his administration draws to a close, effort will be intensified towards accelerating the implementation of critical measures aimed at further improving the Nigerian business environment, enhancing the welfare of Nigerians, and ensuring sustainable economic growth. This was while signing into law the 2023 Appropriations Bill and the 2022 Supplementary Appropriation Bill recently passed by the National Assembly.
Assembly shows additional revenues of 765.79 billion naira and an unfunded deficit of 553.46 billion naira. I have also noted that the National Assembly introduced new projects into the 2023 budget proposal.
On security, the end is now in sight for the protracted challenges of security in Imo State as President Muhammadu Buhari approves the deployment of more sophisticated security devices to once and for all contain the situation. Governor Hope Uzodinma announced this while briefing journalists after an audience with the President.
One positive approval or the other. Any moment from now, we will be getting some technological deployment, surveillance equipments, and some modern technologies to be able to do an advanced kind of security control in the southeast that will help us manage security so that we can fight crime.
Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, has tasked the Federal Road Safety Corps, FRSC, to consolidate on its successes towards achieving the mandate of eradicating road crashes in the country. This was why decorating the new Corps Marshal Dauda Bill.
Leadership of President Muhammadu Buhari to ensure that our roads are safe and that we reduce the high rate of carnage on our roads.
A bit of politics. Presidential candidates of the All Progressives Congress (APC), Bola Ahmed Tinubu, says his administration, if given the mandate, will prioritize food security, job creation as tools for addressing security and other socio-economic problems bedeviling Nigeria. He was speaking in Kano during a meeting with a cross-section of Islamic scholars from the Northwest geopolitical zone.
Election is about our collective march to a better Nigeria. We must march forward. We must not lose the sight of the road.
On the other side, the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, has promised to harness the vast lands in the northern part of the country to solve problems of poverty and insecurity if elected president in the February election. Obi was sharing his thoughts at a town hall meeting organized for the women leaders of the party in Abuja.
Our job is to secure and unite the country. You need to ensure that there's rule of law. There's law and order. We say we must move the country from consumption to production.
Away from politics, few weeks after the official release of a redesigned new Naira notes across the country, its unavailability across financial institutions and platforms in Benue State is generating reactions amongst residents.
Into the cashless economy, we cannot continue to allow a situation where over 85% of the cash that is in circulation is outside the banks. And I've said it at different fora that this is not targeted at anybody. It is just meant for the good and the development of the Nigerian economy.
And that's a bit of the news this morning on Good Morning Nigeria. Thanks a lot for watching it. You can be sure you get more in the course of the day. For now, we'll take a break, after which the program continues with Kieran and Claire.
It's a new dawn for Nigeria. Oh, better days are coming. Better days that gives us hope and strength. Determined to keep this hope alive, bring the spark back to all Nigerians.
It's a new dawn in Nigeria. Renewed hope beckons on our people. The silver lining dots the skies. The firmament portents a bright future as the people of Nigeria move to vote a man whom they have come to trust for the realization of their aspirations for a better Nigeria. That man is Asiwaju Bola Tinubu. He has been tested. He can be trusted. Vote Asiwaju Bola Tinubu as President of Nigeria 2023. Vote Kashim Shettima as Vice President. Vote APC. Surely with Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the smiles are returning. We are close to home.
Bring the smiles back to all Nigerians.
To every politician, as the campaigns gain momentum and passions begin to rise, remember, the errors of your opponents do not make you a success. Do not run down your opponent and inflame passions through violence between and among your supporters. What counts is what you plan to do for the electorate and how you intend to relieve the sufferings and bring succor. Nigeria is in dire need of patriotic leaders at all levels, leaders who will make national development their priority. Concentrate on telling the electorate what you intend to do when you get into office. Focus on making your vision clear to the electorate. Don't engage in verbal abuses, fake news or speeches. Keep dealing with issues that will bring progress. You win the hearts and minds of the people by being above board, by being civil, patriotic, and showing empathy. Let's join hands to make the 2023 elections peaceful. A message from the National Orientation Agency.
Today, we are here to tell you that while we may not be there yet, our military and other security agencies have succeeded and are succeeding in substantially restoring security across the nation. As far as the daunting security challenges we face are concerned, we can tell you that the worst is over. And never again will terrorists and bandits and their cohorts hold sway in our country.
This message is brought to you from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, welcome back. If you've just joined in, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service, and time for us now to join Comfort Amodu on business news. And she says investments and security bills will transform capital market, boost investors' confidence. So let's hear her.
Nigeria has created an integrated export control plan. First one, done. We've also supported the pilot implementation of that plan.
As African countries strategize to accelerate the implementation of the AfCFTA, there are intensified advocacy for governments of African countries to work with the private sector towards delivering a healthy and vibrant business climate in Africa under the African Continental Free Trade Area, with the adoption of the Private Sector Bill of Rights to accelerate the fourth industrial revolution.
So these are the practical things that we're looking at. So they are all included in the Bill of Rights. Peace and security, single currency, revamping the education system, critical enablers that are needed to deliver on the AfTA.
Especially agric section, exportation is quite large, and with the varieties we have, I tell you, no greedy person will think he is going to do it alone.
So we have a PPP arrangement with the Nigerian companies who take these goods from Nigeria, aggregate these goods here. We're using as a platform to assess other African countries through the instrumentality of the African Continental Trade Area.
In the meantime, the Investments and Securities Bill has been described as capable of transforming the capital market, encouraging the influx of foreign investors, as well as boosting investors' confidence, among others. Chairman of the House Committee on Capital Markets and Institutions, Babangida Ibrahim, stated this while commenting on the recent passage of the bill by the House of Representatives. He said the bill seeks to repeal the existing Investment and Securities Act 2007 to establish a new market infrastructure and wide-ranging system of regulation of investments and securities businesses in Nigeria, as well as alternative trading systems, the inclusion of the National Pensions Commission as part of the board of the Securities and Exchange Commission. Meanwhile, investors gained 187.7 billion naira as NGX ASI grew by 0.67% after the trading session on Tuesday. With business news, Comfort Amodu.
Yeah, thank you, Comfort, for the business package. Next on the program, a review of today's national dailies.
All right, let's quickly bring in our newspaper reviewer to do the needful. Chukwudi Baja joins us right now.
I'm happy to be here again, Claire.
Yeah, it's good to see you.
Korean, as always. The feeling is mutual. Yeah, I'm happy to see you guys.
And the Hamatan is started.
Yeah, the Hamatan is perhaps the dread time for me in the year. I hardly fall
Why
sick.
is that so?
I hardly fall sick.
Why is that
the
so?
cold is my ailment.
Well, we'll find a way to fight it.
I'm fighting it. All right. Now we have 3 papers this morning: Blueprint, Punch, and Daily Trust newspaper. Let's begin with the Blueprint newspaper from top to bottom. 2023. Like Obasanjo, Obi gets Clark endorsement. We're unperturbed at campaign organization. Autumn backs Clark, says LP candidates right way to go. Ijo leader Obasanjo supported PDP in 2019, but whatever, that's a to KMO. Get more details on this page 6 of the Blueprint newspaper. Now the lead story here: 1/3 of global economies may slip into recession in 2023, according to the IMF. 3 or 4 others to that says US, Europe, China slowing down activities. Buhari signs 21.83 trillion naira budget packed with 12.1 trillion deficit, 6.6 trillion for debt service. Fears 1.8 trillion interest on CBN loans may accrue. Adequate provision made for 2023 general elections, as according to President. All that on page 6. Now, DMO announces fresh borrowing in 2023 as foreign reserves drop. The story is on page 23. NAF airstrikes kill 3 Boko Haram commanders, 30 terrorists in Sambisa forest with 2 riders. Gunmen slay tricycle operator, 8 others in Anambra. Born Imo police station. Buhari deploys technology in southeast for security reasons. That's of course on page 14 and 18. Airtel, Dangote, NTA remain Nigeria's most valuable companies. All right, of course, the photo story is the president's signing of the budget. Now, Tinubu meets with Northwest Muslim leaders, assures fair and just leadership. It's on page 5. Corpse of murdered couple's son recovered, suspect arrested, on page 13. Osun senator demands 500 million apology from Adeleke over theft allegation. It's on page 8. Motorists react as new third-party insurance rates take effect. It's on page 22. Cholera kills 2-year-old baby, mother, and 1 other in a burning state. Yeah, Claire.
Okay, let's turn to Daily Trust. It has on its front page, 9 months after resignation, Adamu Kyari in Nigeria, seats still vacant in Senate, and it comes with some riders there. Just above the nameplate, how ICT will shape Nigeria's 2023 elections, startups and others. And Buhari signs 2023 budget, queries 1.32 trillion naira inserted by the National Assembly. And of course, those are the there are other stories on the left column. National Assembly gives conditions to reconsider stance on FG borrowing from CBN. And Tom Clark back Obasanjo endorse Obi. INEC wants on fake ad hoc staff recruitment portal. And ritualists invade Ogun community, exhume 40 skulls.
All right, then, let me just run through the Punch, Chukwudi, before you're coming. Above the main flag of the Punch newspaper, the 22 trillion naira loan to attract additional 1.8 trillion interest. That's according to Buhari. It's on page 21. Also on page 21 on the Punch newspaper, railway debt servicing gulps 246 billion naira. China COVID-19, federal government fears spread. 16 countries impose restrictions. It's on page 8. Why I decided not to marry terrorist commander. Why I declined to marry terrorist commander. Twin attack victim. It's on page 3. The lead story on the Punch: PVCs 6.7 million uncollected in 17 states. INEC targets markets. Two riders to that: INEC moves to increase voter card pickup in states. Plans massive sensitization. 14,000 people collect PVCs daily in Lagos. Yaga Africa laments poor awareness. Get all the details on page 2. Now the photo story is the one that is interesting. That's a Pele of Brazil. Millions built football Orisha. Farewell. I mean, I watched that international outfit. I mean, it was a very interesting gathering of the people, especially football lovers. Now, below that, we have reps warn EFCC against selling assets to looters. That's on page 15. Residents count losses in fresh Adamawa communal clash on page 15. ASU protests as federal government withholds union dues. That's on page 16. Chukwudi Ubaja is here with us.
Yes, I am.
So we have a loaded
I am
front page items this morning.
So we're going to try to unload a few.
Yeah.
And I liked it when you said that the Punch, I think it's the Punch really, saying that the football Orisha has been a bad farewell. Yes, Pele has been buried. So we should at this point say goodbye to Arantes do Nascimento.
And I like the way. Sorry, just I like the way Punch, put the Orisha. The Orisha there is a local parlance.
Okay, that's a good one.
That's it's a date. It's a god.
Yeah.
I want to believe that's what the Punch wants to attribute to Pele, the god of soccer.
Yeah, it will sound as if you're on the divide of on the side of Pele when it comes to the comparison, which many of us don't want to hear.
Is there any contestation about that?
Okay, Claire, I wouldn't come here for the
debate of him. I'd like to share with you that I'm not sure you know about is that Pele was also a singer and songwriter.
Are you serious?
Yes, singer and songwriter. I actually saw one of the clips yesterday.
I'll share the clips with you. PVC's 6.7 million uncollected in 17 states. INEC targets markets. That's quite commendable. Moves to increase voter card pickup in states. Plans massive sensitization. Elections monitor. Yaga is not happy with the level of awareness. Again, we say if we had a very effective national orientation agency, we wouldn't even wait for 4 years to get people to know that the plebiscite is something they must always be part of as people who want progress in their country. We pray that the National Orientation Agency will be empowered enough to actually go about its duties so that Nigerians will do what they should do.
Add to that, Chukwudi, I don't want to sound pessimistic or something, but I keep saying this, because system has always been the problem. I want to believe that this issue of registration, picking up PVC, should not be a big deal. Whenever you turn 18, if you turn 18, there should be a place to register and get your card. It should be done on daily basis.
That's very good.
It's not as if maybe during election we come and start registering. There will be sort of registering. They give deadline, and we continue doing that over year in, year out.
We actually call it continuous voter registration.
It's not continuous. There are deadlines here and there. If you don't do this at any time, we will stop this and all of that.
But Kirian, we must admit, so that it doesn't begin to sound as if INEC is always the problem. There are Nigerians who would wait for 4 years before they go to renew or they go to register themselves. Whether you keep the thing close to their doorstep, it doesn't bring about any change of attitude.
If the system has an environment where you know that when you turn 18, you go and register for voting, people will do it. It will become a routine thing. In high school or wherever, if you turn 18, you just walk across to the next INEC office somewhere, register your name and everything, they take your biodata, and of course issue you with a card.
What you're talking about is very important, because when you get the maximum number of people to be part of choosing their leaders, governing them becomes easier, because you would have chosen somebody whom your heart suggested to you. Disenfranchisement, I must say, is not an option in a country that wants to grow. So I fully go with you there. you know. And we should quickly remember the president's assurances and reassurances on free and fair polls. This would be one avenue to helping the man leave us by May in a way that we will forever remember him. So everybody should actually get involved. Okay? You will have this bit about, you know, the global economy likely to experience recession by many nations. 1/3 of global economies may slip into recession in 2023. When it's economics, I tend to be a bit scared talking about it. But if the IMF is coming out, you know, to say these things, they say that Europe, US, China are slowing things down, are likely to slow things down. Why is this happening? Economies seem to be tied to the apron strengths of Europe, China, and the United States. So what we do is to engage attitude, is to engage activity that would affect our macro and micro, you know, activities concerning growing the economy. How the economists want to realize this, maybe Kiriam Chukwudi and Claire may not be, you know, active participants, but we know that that's what they need to do.
Yes, you know, more so when you're not a producing nation, you know, when your manufacturing sector is abysmal, or I mean, there's nothing you can do about it because you are relying hugely on imported products from science and tech driven products to even food items. So how can you now begin to measure when you say we tie on the strengths of US, Europe and China? These are people who are into production. That's what you can do about that.
China particularly was mentioned by the managing director of the IMF, that's Kristalina Georgieva. China, for the first time in 40 years, is expected to drop in terms of global expectations concerning its growth. The implications for us is that grants from these big economies are likely to drop as well. Remember, they are always spoon feeding some of the African nations, and the development partnership with them is also likely to be affected. So as I said earlier, African economies need to grow indeed. We have so many things that the world needs. Are we maximizing our export potentials? Yam, for instance, have we done enough? We like the bold steps taken by this administration towards growing agriculture. Tomato puree. Are we not wasting a lot of tomato which could go into manufacturing, canning of tomato into a scale where we can export to countries on the continent, if not in Europe? These are very important points.
I think that you're making valid points and points that we'll take note of when we started our conversation. And immediately after this segment, we're looking today at economic prospects, and like you said, the IMF and the World Bank did also provide us with global economic outlook, and on the global scale, growth it's not it's slowing down. It's not encouraging. So it's not just China or even Nigeria. So it's a global trend, and the prediction covers almost
actually it's not just China, Europe and the US. It's just that when they sneeze, Claire Chukwudi Kiriam
I wouldn't.
It's a negative compression.
You start coughing already.
She's telling me it's not her portion.
No, I won't touch that.
Look, this is not what you get by going to this is not what you get by going to pray or something.
See, Africa should be told this.
That's not what we're saying is this.
Let's not go there.
That is what is called practical reality.
Let's not go there.
If you keep churning out policies or strategies, non-implementable strategies, or abysmally implemented strategies, you're not going to get any result. And if you keep doing one thing the same way for years, you're not going to get a change in result.
Anyway,
somebody give me hallelujah, have its limitations.
I don't want to be dragged into the realm of theory and practice. Of theory and practice. But let's leave that alone. There is a point at which both of them meet, where you do something and you pray.
No, without faith,
yes,
you can't
achieve anything.
I will have to agree on that. But under normal circumstance, biblically and otherwise, a lazy man will not eat.
No, we're not
so everything that is not just the Bible. The Holy Book. If you ask you to toil, so you can feed. If our value orientation cannot adjust to even believe in yourself. For instance, people will prefer to buy made in Ghana than made in Nigeria, for instance. So how are you going to grow? You cannot grow with that kind of mindset. If you're not being deliberate about achieving success and applying all the indices concerned, you're not going to get it. It's a practical thing. That's what I'm trying to.
So my last response before we sign off. I'm being told that we should. Our guests are already in the studio. So, but my last response to the issue of PVC collection and the awareness apathy and all that. You see, we Nigerians talk a lot and do very little ourselves. It's like, I give you a scenario. A young man now, who aspires to get married, and you, Chooks the boy, you provide the resources for the young man. He gets married, he wants a bed. Again, he doesn't have the resources. You provide the bed for him, or he now wants you to also carry the bed into his bedroom.
First of all, the marriage should not happen because you're walking them into a death trap.
How about you could be?
I could be brutally frank.
Do you know the number of PVCs that have not been collected? People go to register when it's time to collect. The INEC said hundreds of PVCs, are line follow. So people should, play their part. Yeah, that's what I want us to note. So Kieran, play your part. Chukudi, play your part. Thank you for listening to me and for agreeing with me.
I think something is about Claire today.
Yes. All right. Thank you. Good morning, Nigeria. Conversation will begin right now after the commercials.
Nigeria, African beauty on the Gulf of Guinea, blessed with natural landmarks and wildlife reserves. Nigeria, largest economy in Africa. Nigeria, famous accomplishment in entertainment and sports. Nigeria, resourced with globally respected human capital. Our uniqueness lies in our tenacity, our acumen, a testament of success. At NTA, we are forever proud to be the showcase channel of this positive energy and the reflection of the good in our nation. The capacity to tell our nation's story would not have been possible without the support and patronage of the three arms of government: ministries, departments, agencies, corporate bodies, advertisers, religious bodies, civil society groups, political parties, and of course you, our esteemed viewers. As we wish you a prosperous new year, let's get set to make 2023 even greater together.
Critical military objectives of total defeats of the terrorists in the Northeast is already being achieved. Synchronized group and air operations have continued to inflict huge casualties on the terrorists, and have been forcing many of them, including their commanders and emirs, to surrender in droves with members of their families. Whilst areas where terrorists hitherto had some freedom of actions are being cleared, and socio-economic life is gradually returning to the most parts of the Northeast. As well, internal displaced persons are now returning to their ancestral homes to start life all over in dignity under a safe and more secure environment.
This message is brought to you from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
To every politician, as the campaigns gain momentum and passions begin to rise, remember, the errors of your opponents do not make you a success. Do not run down your opponent and inflame passions to violence between and among your supporters. What counts is what you plan to do for the electorate and how you intend to relieve the sufferings and bring succor. Nigeria is in dire need of patriotic leaders at all levels, leaders who will make national development their priority. Concentrate on telling the electorate what you intend to do when you get into office. Focus on making your vision clear to the electorate. Don't engage in verbal abuses, fake news or speeches. Keep dealing with issues that will bring progress. You win the hearts and minds of the people by being above board, by being civil, patriotic, and showing empathy. Let's join hands to make the 2023 elections peaceful. A message from the National Orientation Agency.
All our country people, they talk with one voice. Dem say na Asiwaju Bola Tinubu dem want as president of Nigeria for this president election. Asiwaju Bola Tinubu na the man wey we all know and see all the good work he dey do for the country, especially when he be governor of Lagos State. Na him God use turn Lagos to the best state for Nigeria. Today, many people all over Nigeria dey like to go Lagos go settle down for business and better life. Because of the good work wey Bola Tinubu do, people of Nigeria, as Asiwaju do for Lagos, na so him ready to do am for the whole country. That Asiwaju Bola Tinubu for president of Nigeria. Vote Kashim Shettima as vice president. Vote APC, the party wey get broom.
Thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria. And to begin conversation on the subject matter, let's watch this package on 2023 expectations for economic sector put together by Oyemi Ajayi.
Strengthening the Nigerian economy has continued to be the concern of all and sundry, and its growth is the desire of everyone. The World Bank has revealed that inflation in Nigeria is one of the highest in the world. This is said to be the effect of the slow economic growth with declining output. Adverse effect was the rise in food prices, oil prices, unemployment amongst others, pushing many Nigerians down the poverty line in the country. However, with the inception of the year 2023, expectations are high with projections and predictions from experts at different quarters. With the budget signed by the president, the general election is believed to be a major factor to be considered, as whoever wins the election must focus on reviving the country's economy. In its forecast, the World Bank has lowered the country's 2023 economic growth to 3.2%, while calling on the governments in the sub-Saharan African region to urgently implement measures to restore macroeconomic stability and protect the poor in a context of slow growth and high inflation. It says growth will be supported mainly by the rebound in the private consumption, prompted mostly by accommodative monetary policy as inflationary pressure subsides. What more should be done to strengthen the country's economy? What are the roles of the citizens and the governments in ensuring this is achieved? Guests already seated will be answering these questions and more shortly.
All right, Oyemi Ajayi giving us the background report for our conversation this morning. Once again, our focus will be on the economy, looking at our expectations and, of course, what we can do better and how to do it better. Our guests are all ready for us, so let's begin our introductions. Dr. Emeka Okengo is a development economist. He joins us right here in the studio in Abuja. Dr. Kengu, thank you very much, and compliment of the season to you.
It's always a privilege to be here. Happy New Year, Nigeria.
Also joining us via Zoom from Kaduna is Professor Yushao Ango. And Professor Ango is a professor of finance and entrepreneurship, Kaduna State University. Right. Professor Ango, thank you for joining us. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. Compliment of the season again.
Yes.
Okay, now let's move to Ibadan, NTA Ibadan studio, where we have Ni Akinsiju. Ni is a financial and investment analyst. Ni, you are holidaying in Ibadan. Compliments of the season and welcome to the program.
It's a pleasure. Very good morning, Nigerians.
All right, and we also have Dr. Moda Yusuf. Dr. Moda Yusuf is the Chief Executive Officer of the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise and former DG Lagos Chamber of Commerce. It's good to have you with us this morning on the show.
Thank you very much. Good morning, and good morning to all Nigerians.
Okay, I'd like to start with you, Dr. Moda Yusuf. If you can hear me, I'd like to start with you, principally because of your background. Let's begin our conversation by evaluating how 2022 was for most investors, and in Nigeria. How would you describe it? Was it a good year to invest in the country?
Well, it wasn't a particularly good year, although it is not peculiar to Nigeria, because the investors in the economy experienced some very serious headwinds during the year. But we must also say that we did fairly well, because as at Q3, that third quarter of last year, which was the last GDP numbers we had a GDP growth of 2.25%, which is not bad when we compare it to what happened around the world. It's an expression or a demonstration of the resilience that we have here in Nigeria by businesses, and more importantly by the citizens. It was a very difficult year. We had challenges around foreign exchange, which was one of the major challenges we had, both with respect to the depreciation in the currency, the volatility of the currency, the illiquidity in the foreign exchange market, and to some extent some elements of corruption in the foreign exchange ecosystem. We had serious headwinds from the energy sector. Energy prices were extremely high. They got to levels that we have never seen in recent history. When we are buying diesel for 800, at the time we go to 900 naira per liter. In a country where the total public power generation capacity was just about between 4,000, 4,005. So a lot of businesses still rely on self-generation of electricity. So the energy factor was a very big factor, which also fed into inflation. Inflation was a very, very challenging issue, both for the citizens and for businesses, because erosion of purchasing power. The World Bank even reported that 5 million people dropped into poverty as a result of high inflation. So it affected the welfare of the citizens. It had a very devastating effect in 2022. Then, of course, there are issues in the fiscal space, increasing deficits, high debt levels, debt service obligations. All of these things were challenges around our fiscal operations, which, of course, also contributed to the overheating of the economy from the point of view of credit and from the point of view of inflation, and also the point of view of the ways and means finances by the Central Bank of Nigeria, which has now become a subject of a major contention between the National Assembly and the executive. Then, of course, insecurity was also a major factor, which also fed into food inflation. We had issues of climate change, which also affected performance in the agricultural sector. So on the whole, it was quite a challenging year. And we must congratulate all the businesses that were able to make it to 2023, and also the citizens as well, because it wasn't easy at all, especially from the point of view of the high cost of goods and services.
We return to you, in the course of the program. Let's go to Lee. I think Siju is in Ibadan studio. Lee, you are conversant with the vagaries of the nation's economy. And in most cases, when we discuss Nigeria's economy, I'll cast my mind back, to what how we were able to manage the economy over the years. And what comes to my mind is that there has been difficulty in managing the nation's economy, just like other nations. But again, there are peculiarities and challenges that you could say is synonymous with Nigeria's economic administration. Now, let's look at last year, 2022, and all the challenges that the nation faced in its economic sector. Give us your own assessment of how the year went in terms of the economy of the nation.
Yeah, thank you very much. Dr. Muda has more or less profiled challenges, as it were. I would not want to return to that. But of course, in my character, when I look at challenges, I also want to look at those policies by governments and, of course, different activations at the level of the private sector to see how these challenges are being resolved. And of course, what has stood Nigeria out over the years, especially starting 2015, has been this consistency by government to, as much as possible, despite the headwind, to as much as possible resolve the challenges in the economic environment. For a country that had gone through two recessions, 2016 and 2020, that we are still standing even much above the water level is commendable to my mind. And of course, going forward, I believe that there are opportunities coming out of the challenges we had gone through. Dr. Muda had talked about inflation, talked about GDP, and of course about high cost of goods and services. I think going forward, when we compare, to other jurisdictions, we have done fairly well. Our stock exchange, the Nigerian Stock Exchange, that returned perhaps one of the highest performance in 2022. As at up to date, there's a record of about 19 plus percentage returns, on investment on the All-Share Index. I think, and of course, that is an indication of the collective of the listed companies. We have seen the tax administrators, that's the FIRS, meeting up with nearly their 10 trillion naira target, and to that extent, it's actually a show indicative of the fact that most listed entities, most listed companies perform fairly well, and therefore, because they have also returned impressive profits, the tax authorities could actually get more, squeeze more from their earnings. And at the level of our debt, yes, when we hear about the 6.3 trillion naira allocated to debt in the 2023 budget, as it were, the first impression is that of shock. But I think to a large extent, the percentage ratio, especially when we look at the domestic debt servicing, that's debt servicing allocation, which is stated at 4.41 trillion, compared to the 1.81 trillion foreign debt servicing. I think that is money, capital retained in our economy. And of course, it goes back to our capital market, and it makes our capital market more active, as it were. And again, the fact of debt, when especially there's a connection between the domestic capital markets and either federal government, state government, and of course private sector borrowing, it shows we'll continue to have an enlarged debt market, as it were, which is good for the economy. And I think it's if we concentrate more, on our debt markets, it will help our economy going forward. And yes, in terms of power, energy, and I am impressed that the federal government was able to highlight a major objective of the 2023 budget as energy sufficiency, because that has been a major challenge for industry and for industrialization, as it were. And at the latest count, we are talking about, for the first time, we are talking about 8,000 megawatts available power, available electricity power. Well, the difference, however, the challenge, however, is how to transmit the available 8,000 megawatts of power, to consumers. That to my mind is a challenge. But again, I am also monitoring the fact that a lot of activities is ongoing at the level of transmission, especially with the Siemens contract, the Siemens engagement. So much that even now we're talking of 5,000, 6,000 transmission capacity. So I think going forward, there will be a bridging of gap, and of course, the size of the budget, the size of the 2023 budget, if eventually it is implemented and crystallized, would also help us avoid what may be the global threats of recession, as highlighted by the IMF. We're looking at a $49 billion budget in 2023. This, of course, will help liquidity in the system and, of course, galvanize productive activities. But more than that, is a transition year. It will also create a continuous momentum, for the new government coming in. So, to a large extent, I am believing that 2023 will be a good year. Because already we have understood the nuances of the challenges that we are being confronted with, and then going forward, there are policies that I think are suitable enough to engage these challenges.
Joe, thank you. We do wish that your face was a bit clearer. I hope that the engineers do something to it so that we can see your face much clearer. Compliment of the season to you. We'll get back to you in a short while. Let's bring in Dr. Okengwu now. And the reason I decided to keep you is because Muda is an investor, is a financial analyst. You are a development economist. So you've listened to both guests speak their minds. Of course, Dr. Muda Yusuf is you heard his explanation and the impact of all the fiscal and monetary policies on investors and investment in Nigeria, and not just on investment, and also the citizenry. You've also listened to the analysis of Niyu Akichiji. Is always an optimist, seeing the light at the end of every tunnel and all that. As a development economist, makes sense such that the average Nigerian would understand when we are talking about, okay, it's a miracle that we are still standing in the midst of all that happened, the monetary policies, the global shocks, the inflation that has refused to drop, the high prices of goods in the market. What does it mean to the average Nigerian?
Well, I don't think it's a miracle you can put a definition to. The miracle wasn't magic. The miracle is oil. Okay, know that each time oil prices dipped, we got into a recession. Each time it rebound, we got out of recession. That's technically the LCM of it. But governance is all about people. So whatever it is, whatever policy you want to evaluate, interrogate, you must interrogate it against the people. And then this is where you now look at the people as a whole. You're not looking at Nigeria, from this micro sector of the federal government or the state governments. You must be able to look at Nigeria holistically. So we're looking at 280 million people and how they have fared. So against whatever optimism, all of us are optimists. There's no other choice. But again, your optimism must be juxtaposed against 154 million people who are classified as poor.
133.
154.
133.
Okay. But
Yes,
from statistics show 153.
Multidimensionally poor.
No, I'm saying poor. I'm not going to go multidimensionally poor.
Okay.
And then you're not talking about those who are multidimensionally poor. I am talking about those who are living below the breadline. These are the three sectors. And the list of that figure will be about 80 million. So let's leave the 133, million, because you're talking about, sectoral, how access to education, access to, some basic infrastructure. And then we're talking about those who do not even have access to food. Okay? Now you're talking about those, about 2 million people who have been defined or classified or identified, as being most vulnerable. And you're talking about 400,000 children who also have been defined as almost, won't be able to survive because of malnutrition. So whatever it is that we want to do from the development perspective, you'll be looking at it from that. Let us even look at it from 2 million people. Okay, that will have 2 million people who are likely to lose their lives because of lack of nutrition or lack of food. That will be a fair basis of not just opposing whatever else, the shocks, the corporate world exists, in itself. If you play in that world, it's a world that's very different from the realities. And this is why each time, you guys have a program, you want to say, how does it impact the ordinary Nigerian? So maybe as a development person, let me take my own cue from that ordinary person and then be able to define who the ordinary Nigerian right now is. Okay, let's not take the ordinary Nigerian as somebody who is earning 200,000 naira a month. Would that person be middle class or low class or ordinary? Now, if that person has 5 children and you are dividing that 200,000 amongst the 5 children, you'll be very, very shocked that by the time you now put in, the indicators of variables, okay, food, school fees, transportation, energy costs, this. That person who is earning 200,000, who likely or most likely is a director or assistant director, is poor. I'm not trying to now bring a new classification to what it is we're talking about here. Because Claire, Kirian, if you're earning 200,000, okay, and you have 5 children or 6 children, and you divide that 200,000 by your 6 children, what you're actually earning in a day is about 4,000 or 5,000 if you share it pro rata. And then by the time you begin to allocate
less than that,
that 5,000 to the basics, your transport, your fuels, your medicals, your this, you also find out that even at 200,000 as your take-home salary, you are poor. You might not be vulnerable. It's important to get this so that when we are dealing with going forward, we should be able to now look at those things that can be able to make it a lot easier, okay, for us to be able to work through these new, headwinds that are coming. And it's just not your 6 children, Claire. It's also your dependents. It's also your in-laws. It's also your younger sisters and brothers. It's also your family. So you're just not sharing that 200,000 with 6 people. You might be shocked that because of a lot of factors now, this, multidimensional politics, you are now sharing with about 20 more people. So these are
Dr. Kenwood, let me just so you can also conclude. Yeah. And by the way, I don't have 6 children, so just to
it's not you now.
Yes, to keep the record straight. Yes, you've been mentioning data.
Yes.
200 million, 154 million, and all that. Now, some would argue or question the source or sources of the data that you're using to compute, the growth. And then also argue that if Nigeria is a very big country, with over 200 million people, and then comparatively with other countries, when you bring down the data, you expect to have high numbers. And that those high numbers may not be reflective of the true situation with regards to, sectoral analysis.
No, again, me and you, we are on the same page on 133 million. Because when I said 153, you said 133.
Yes, but people would say, some would say, yes, You are saying, but this figure that you're telling us, based on the population, in the number of population, comparatively with other countries of the world, it's not reflective of what is on ground.
How is it not reflective? How is it not reflective? To what extent is it not reflective?
Because it will question, you to now question, okay, the resources, the available resources and the efforts.
Okay, let me give you a very simple analysis so that we can make this easier for everybody. Now, if we are in a recession and if people have lost jobs, if statistics say that 5 million people have been thrown into poverty, how many people is the federal government employing? How many are the state or subnationals employing? Less than 2 million Nigerians. Now, if you say that climate change, insecurity, insurrections has impacted on people going back to the farms, people have lost livelihoods. Is that a fact? Now, if you say that people no longer have disposable capital, okay, now those who are giving you services are not able to give those services at full value.
Okay,
is that true?
I think he's been able to explain himself out. And the analogy tried to explain certain aspects of the challenges that we have. But again, when we return to him, we shall become more specific in terms of where we would like him to, delve into and bring out more explanations for us to understand. Now, let's get the first shot from Professor Ishao Ango, Professor of Finance and Entrepreneurship. You listened to our guests, especially Lee, when he talked about understanding the nuances of the nation's economic challenges. Well, we were all there in the 80s and early 90s, when, of course, the administrations we had then tried to profile economic solutions by injecting new blood into the system. We had SAP, that was the most frustrating one then, structural adjustment program that came under the Babangida administration. And during that period, we learned that Nigeria is difficult to be managed economically, and that all economic strategies and policies, that were applied in other crimes did not work in Nigeria, and SAP was administered. Well, the rest is history. Now, looking at 2022 and all the challenges that this government has experienced, in the economic sector, and how we came out of them, especially recessions we had on two occasions, 2016 and 2020. What is your assessment of 2022 in the economic milieu of the nation?
Well, like the previous speakers have spoken, me and Dr. Muda and Dr. Emeka, I think basically what we have gone through in 2022 was a very tough year, if you put it in the context of realities of what happened. Now, but of course it was tough, and we were able to survive it with some growth, despite what is happening globally. The essence, and I believe what we need to understand is the fact that this is a global phenomenon, and for many countries, they have not been able to even manage it successfully. Quite a number of countries are in recession. Some are, according to IMF, about 1/3 of the world economy in recession this year. So that is to say, it was a very rough terrain that we passed through, and for us to at least survive and our heads are above the waters is something to be happy about. Now, this is of course coming definitely because of the various policies, monetary and fiscal, some of them that have been carried out. Perhaps maybe that is what helped us come out of recession twice and move on. Now, 2022 was challenging in many respects, as has been stated. Most importantly, like was stated earlier, we have seen issues to do with the huge deficit we are still experiencing. We have seen issues to do with energy challenges, which, if you remember very well, it started, you can see the body language of government was, not trying to adjust the prices, but then the marketers were trying to force them more or less, because we saw during the course of the year, there was a time some of them said they were going to strike or something like that so that they can increase the prices, and then finally price was increased slightly, and I believe they're still not satisfied. they want more, and that is why we are having a lot more challenges. So yes, when you put this side by side with the challenges that the country faced in the 90s, especially when the issue of SAB was introduced, then you can see that actually there are issues, quite a number of them, especially in the foreign exchange market, in the money market, the capital market, that have been along with the expectations. People, what do they expect? What do they have? I mean, are they afraid, because the introduction of SAB, while it is the process of assessing some of these things, but then it has also put some question marks. Everybody is afraid whether or not they will have something. And we saw what happened with the foreign exchange market when, because of that fear, rates are moving through the roofs in the power market. Perhaps if not for meters taking, maybe now we'll be talking about over 1,000 naira per dollar. Even though, when you look at all these, you realize that it's also happening globally. If you remember very well, if you take, for example, even in convertible currencies, they were also affected. Euro was much higher than dollar, for example. We know that, but what is the story today? What is the relationship between pounds, for example, and US dollar? What is the relationship today? So it's a reality of what happened. But what I see is that we have come out of a very difficult year. We have survived it. We have had challenges, especially with poor output from the oil sector because of the issues of debt and other challenges that we were not able to do it. We saw the non-oil sector doing very well. We were happy that the non-oil sector was doing very well. But obviously, the non-oil sector was doing very well relative to the oil sector because the oil sector was not working very adequately. Now, luckily, again, towards the end of the year, we saw that measures have been taken that probably have made it safer and then reduce the incidence of theft, and then the oil is coming back. So perhaps with all that put in place, and perhaps the more challenging year, which I believe this year will be, because of the issues to do with global economic trends, and then the issues to do with the deficit in the budgets and the subsidies that we're still providing when we cannot afford it. So those are the challenges that I believe we're going to face in the year 2023, but we have come out of 2022 fairly well, fairly okay. We survive it. I believe we are going to do it, God willing, in 2023.
Professor Ango, thank you. We'll return to you in just a moment. Let's get back to Lagos and bring in Dr. Muda Yusuf. And Dr. Muda Yusuf, again, I must say that we do relate with you when you talked about the increasing, fuel prices. We also relate with you when you talk about increasing prices of food and services, and all the inflation, going up and on and up. But I would like you to explain to us and to the viewer. We are not financial or economic experts. There are some terms that we hear and we don't, they don't resonate with what is happening, with what people see in the market. It does not resonate, with the ordinary Nigerian and all that. When we talk about GDP expansion, and you economists tell us that it's been on an expansionist trend. We've had how many periods of, we've recorded maybe 3 or 4 consecutive periods of growth and all that. What does that mean? Hello, Dr. Muda Yusuf. Are you with us? Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Dr. Yusuf? Hello, Dr. Yusuf. If you can't hear me, okay. So let me bring in Lee Kinshijo to probably explain to.
I think I
okay. So I'm told that Dr. Muda Yusuf. Okay. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Did you get my question?
Now,
you want me to repeat it?
Yes, I have a bit of it, but let me just quickly respond this way. We should be looking at the way forward now, and whatever suggestions we can make for those who are incoming in the next administration and the way forward for this year. We talked about issues about all these economic terminologies and how the ordinary Nigerians can relate to them. If the ordinary Nigerian doesn't know anything, at least they know that the cost of goods and services have been extremely high. That is one thing that is very obvious to all of them. And we can all feel the pain, of the average Nigerian in 2022, across everywhere in the country. So we have mentioned the headwinds. The headwinds are those things that were constraints to development, those things that were constraints to investment. That is what we call headwinds. So when I say headwinds, I mean constraints. The difficulties that businesses faced, the difficulty that the citizens faced. In terms of going forward, we'll be looking at reforms. We need reforms in some critical areas of the economy. And when I talk about reforms, I'm talking about changes that needs to take place, either in terms of policy, or in terms of regulation, or in terms of investment. That is what I mean by reforms. So we need to see reforms around the foreign exchange environment, because economic growth and development is about investment. If there is no investment, the economy cannot grow. Jobs cannot be created. Poverty cannot be alleviated. So creating the environment for investment is very critical, and the foreign exchange policy is very critical to the creation of investment. What we have seen in the last few years around our foreign exchange policy has created a whole lot of distortions in the foreign exchange market. It has created an opportunity for people to be round tripping, moving money from one window to another window, and making more money than people who are even entrepreneurs in the economy. We have to put an end to that. And the foreign exchange also created a whole lot of corruption.
On the issue of the foreign exchange, what would you like to see happen? A convergence, or what kind of measure would you like to see happen to, to bring about the kind of your expectation of investors?
Yes, I'm leading to that.
Okay.
So the point is that we need to see a reform that will put an end to administrative allocation of foreign exchange. We need to see an exchange rate that is a bit more unified, that will narrow the margin between the various markets. And the good thing is that many of the candidates so far have also promised that kind of reform. So that is a relief going forward. We are likely to see a shift in the foreign exchange policy environment that will deal with all these distortions that you have. We need to move quickly again around oil and gas reforms. You can see the fuel queues. We have been on this issue of fuel queues for over 10 years. And it's because of the failure to reform the sector. We need to create an environment where this subsidy problem will go. We have better regulatory environment. We have more investment. Right now, there is not enough private investment in our oil and gas, particularly in the downstream, because of this subsidy problem. I know the subsidy will come with some pains, but for this economy to move forward, in terms of allowing investment in refineries, investment in pipelines, investment in petrochemicals, investment in the transportation, the retailing, and all of that, because we need a whole lot of private capital in that sector. The government cannot do it alone. We cannot have such a strategic sector where NNPC will be the only one sitting on it. It is not proper. It's a major problem for the economy. So we need to reform that space to free resources for government to do other things, to reduce all these deficits, to reduce the debt and all of that. And we also need to address the issue of insecurity in the oil and gas upstream. We have stories about all this oil theft and all of that. The economy has been bleeding. So that is also very critical. We need to reform the power sector. We need more investment in the power sector.
Dr. Oda, thank you. Let's pause you there because you have really made your point and they're very clear, yeah, and unambiguous. Right? These are issues we've also been talking about over the years. You were talking about reforms. We've had reforms over the years in different sectors of our national economy, and oil and gas sector most especially. Right, and you are now complaining of the oil sector not having enough investment. Of course, what will you get when we can't even refine our oil, when our refineries are not functional, when our pipelines are vandalized and what have you? So we need to get to the basics. I mean, if I have understanding of what we are talking about. Now, budget is a working instrument of government. There is no nation that can work out any kind of economic progress without budgeting. And I'm going to kneel here because the president has just signed the budget into law. So it's now an act. Now, 21.83 trillion naira budget packed with 12.1 trillion deficit, 6.6 trillion for debt servicing. And there are fears that 1.8 trillion interest on CBN loans may accrue. I want you to contextualize all of this, and give an assessment of this year's budget vis-a-vis expectations of Nigerians in the economic sector.
As much as possible, people, of course, that describe me as optimists, and I do not in any way want to deny that because it is also part of my business to look at the opportunities deriving or derivable from challenges. So when there are challenges, as we had espoused here, I, as much as possible, look at what is being done, either at the level of the federal, states, or even local governments, and even what the private sector players, are doing to find a way around these challenges. And so when I look at the budget, what I look at are those challenges the budget is trying to redress, And what I did was to first go back to the presentation by His Excellency the President of President Muhammadu Buhari, and I was able to ferret the objectives of the budget as linked to the 2021-2025 development plan. And that's to the fact that it talks to macroeconomic stability, food security, energy sufficiency, transportation, and human capital development, and a number of others. Now, when you look at that ecosystem as built by the president, it is actually an acknowledgement of the challenges inherent in our economic environment. And you now have budget heads, to address those issues. One, the capital budget, for instance, the capital allocation at 597, though the president presented at 5.35, the National Assembly increased to 5.97 trillion. And well, I think that is okay, given the constriction, the headwind that Dr. Muda Yusuf talked about in terms of our capacity to generate revenue. But again, when I saw 398 billion naira allocated to the Ministry of Works, that tells me that a lot of activities will be delivered along that line in terms of road construction and especially there's this also provision for rural roads that will connect farm gate to city gate or farm gate to market gate, which is important because in many ways the timeline between our movements harvested products from the farm to the city, you have a lot of post-harvest wastages and all that. So the road connecting the farm and the city, either for use as raw materials, products for raw materials or products for consumption, you have a lot of post-harvest waste because of that bad road, So I will expect that to be implemented. We also expect a lot of high rates build-up construction. But what I've also seen going into the budget is a lot of optimism around figures in the non-oil sector, whereas we have had long before now the dominance of the oil sector determining the kind of revenue for the budget. But I can see now that the non-oil sector, either at the level of taxation, tax collection, or at the level of even earnings from the government-owned enterprises, are now becoming the major suppliers of revenue, to the federal government. So I think what we have been able to achieve, what the federal government have been able to achieve to a large extent, is a paradigm shift from where we had always been dependent, on oil revenue, now to the non-oil sector, which has been a major aspiration for most players, for most followers of the economy, as it were. So for me, that is a major achievement for the federal government, and it's reflected in the October and November Federal Accounts Allocation Committee, where you have about 903 billion naira to be shared, amongst the three tiers of government, because for the first time, we saw oil production move from under the 1 million figure to above the 1 million. I now have more earnings again from the Federal Revenue Service, So that was able to boost revenue available for sharing by the three tiers of government. So if that is the only achievement this government had achieved, going into a transition period, I think it has told that, the implication is that we have been able to effectively diversify our earning or income base, as it were. So the general impact that I am looking at is a situation where there will be more money, to fund this budget, because again, we've had challenges of projected earnings, projected revenue, and we have seen also a lot of shortfalls. But going forward, I am believing that with the recovery of oil production in the Niger Delta axis, we should be able to earn more. I'm also optimistic about energy sufficiency. We are now, for the first time, there's an addition of hydropower, to the national grid in the Zugeru power plant and Kashimbila power plant, that is going to add another 700 megawatts to the power to the national grid. That's a major achievement. So for me, it is a continuous thing. As we recognize these challenges, there are also processes and policies that are being applied, and I follow those policies. And I feel that when those policies are being crystallized, because for me, implementation is different from crystallization. So we are going to see 700 megawatt addition from renewable power. And that's good for me. And then, if we talk of inflation, it's a global thing, and in fact, Nigeria has been able to hold its head, compared to other jurisdictions. Especially if you compare it to even very developed economies, either at the level of the European Union or countries of the EU, and of course even the US, that is now celebrating a decrease from 7%, 7.9 to 7.6 thereabout, when we know that the benchmark for most of this.
We are getting an explanation, and of course, for want of time, we need to ensure that everybody makes his own contribution to the conversation. So we want to bring in Dr. Kengu here. Dr. Kengu, listens to the other guests. I don't want to ask you a question now, because from what they have explained, you'll be able to key into one or two items and try to dissect them. But what I want to add is that the DMO announced that there will be fresh brewing in 2023. I want you to put all of that into.
Well, you see, I think what is important is that we also put the caveat that we are not scrutinizing government. We are talking about our country and the way forward.
Exactly.
So it is not about performance, it is about pathways. Okay? And in looking at pathways, what is critical is that you look at what you have done, maybe right or wrong, and then look at where you can be able to now, align it. Truth of the matter, it is global, yes. But every economy, like every politics, is local. You understand that? And why I tried to draw that inference of 200,000 is because somebody who's earning 200,000 supposedly is comfortable. Okay? And I'm trying to say to you that somebody who's earning 200,000 with the socio-economic realities on ground cannot be comfortable, okay, because of first and foremost your primary responsibilities and then the add-ons that has now been brought upon you, by the dwindling economic fortunes we have. Now, you talked about DMO, fresh borrowings. I keep telling you that there's nothing wrong with borrowing, but there's everything wrong in not borrowing right. And not borrowing right is not thinking you're borrowing through. Now, when we talk about infrastructure, and I keep giving this example, if you're building a rail track from here leading to Port Harcourt, okay, and you get to Lokoja and you cannot continue, people will see the rail track from Abuja to Lokoja, but you haven't completed your loop, so you can't begin to return on your investments. Okay, so that's not infrastructure developed. And if you're not careful, by the time you get back to that infrastructure, it's going to be costing you much more. Okay, because you need to do, technical audits and all that to be able to get back. Now, this is a government, we're in a transition. We have another 6 months maximum, and a new administration will come into place. Okay, and by the time they come into place, they will come with their own policy, their programs. From what, the contestants or the major contestants, one of them would emerge, hopefully. And when that person emerges, we are going to be expecting him to be doing the things he's telling us he wants to do now.
But let me, sorry again, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We must take a short break.
Okay.
When we come back, we'll allow you to continue. Let's take a short break.
They swore an oath to serve our fatherland and defend the people. They traded their freedom, comfortable homes, and mortgaged their lives on the battleground for our unity and peaceful living. These are the great, fearless, loyal, and committed Nigerian armed forces who risked their lives courageously to safeguard our borders. But in the line of duty, many never returned. Nigerians, arise, let's celebrate our fallen heroes. Put on the remembrance emblem with pride to support the incapacitated and families of our fallen heroes.
The occasion gives cause for reflection and reminds us of the sacrifice made by our armed forces in preserving the unity of the country.
All ministries, power state house, religious and corporate bodies to donate generously to the Emblem Appeal Launch. Send your donations to this account. Account name, Emblem Appeal Launch. Account number 393-200-7526. EcoBank Nigeria PLC.
Every day in our country, senior citizens are discriminated against, disparaged, and treated with disdain by those who ought to respect them. We are all complicit in the way we have treated the elderly members of our society as institutions, families, or members of a shared society. Every time senior citizens get offered less than they deserve for the work they do because they are old, poor, and desperate, we are failing them. Senior citizen loses a child, and wow, they must be responsible for their death. Every time a senior citizen gets labeled a witch, is called mad, and shooed out of the way because they have no memory of where they were headed and look unkempt, we are failing them. We say, abeg, it all old, make it do die, make everybody for rest, to ailing parents, uncles and aunts. That's discrimination. That is neglect. When you see an old woman getting beat up and being accused of witchcraft, do not turn the other way. Stop and teach people that white hairs, wrinkles and hunchbacks are no evidence of witchcraft. Aging comes with a memory decline. Sometimes it's not out of place to have elderly people lose their way, forget details of their lives, and how to properly take care of themselves. When they get to this stage, they deserve your empathy, not scorn. Our ailing fathers, mothers, aunties, and uncles are deserving of quality healthcare and peaceful transition. Make their last moments memorable. Senior citizens have paid their dues. They deserve your care. Stop all forms of discrimination against them today.
The security situation in Nigeria has been reasonably stable in spite of activities of unpatriotic elements engage in various criminal activities around the country. Daily situation reports coming in from states. 2 months ago, it has shown relative peace on many of our highways, such as Abuja, Kaduna Birnin Gwari, Sokoto, Zamfara, Kaduna.
This message is brought to you from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Our pastors, our imams, in every church, in every mosque, please realize that in the course of praying for peaceful and transparent elections, we all have duties beyond prayers. If we want a stable society before, during, and after the elections, what should you be saying to those that worship with you? All Sundays and all Fridays, you are saddled with the responsibility of bringing up good generations. It is therefore your duty to both man and God to ensure peace all the time, no matter about elections alone. People talk to people and people listen. Talk to your followers. Make them listen to ensure peaceful 2023 elections. This message is from the National Orientation Agency.
All right, welcome back to Good Morning Nigeria. And just before we went for that short break, Dr. Okengwu was speaking on, of course, the local dimension of growing our economy, and I would also like you to take along with you, because the IMF is predicting a drop in our inflation, of course, while dropping us our growth rate by 0.2 basis points. And I'm wondering, it says we must match our monetary policies with corresponding fiscal policies in certain areas. You were talking about infrastructural development.
Okay. Who is we? Is we the federal government of Nigeria or the people of Nigeria? If it is federal government of Nigeria, we're going to be where we are. But if it's the people of Nigeria, then it is time, and this is where I was driving to, for the federation to now begin to develop holistic national plans, which we've never had. The subnationals and the sub-subnationals, if you may, must align their fiscal and monetary policies with the national in this transition, so that whoever it is that's going to be coming in as our new administration will come in with a country that is tied, okay, that is bonded. So when we are now borrowing, and that's why I was trying to give you, the example of, start and stop infrastructure. If you need everybody, the rail lines that is supposed to be in the exclusive list runs around, the national and the subnational locations. So if it means that everybody has to now tie their budget around that rail track, what are you bringing to the table, so that when you start, don't like it's done in any other place, they say to you is a 6 months period for us to be able to end. You are completing, so that you can now unlock that your return on investment cycle. This is the major problem we have with policies. Now, because you have the federal government doing so much, it becomes a race where the man is doing a 100-meter dash, the other person thinks he's doing a marathon. Okay, but all of us must be on the same page for this to be able to move. And remember that this administration, no matter what it is you're talking about, has a lifespan of less than 180 days, if you may, technically. Okay, so if you do not appreciate that what we should be doing now is actually conducting more of technical audits on those key areas that they thought, we didn't have the most impact. And what is it? How have we impacted on the life, don't even call it ordinary, on the life of the Nigerian? And you keep talking about, okay, we have this spat about statistics. The statistics can come from anywhere. People conduct studies. Okay, you have your MBS conducting their own study. People would, even argue against the MBS statistics and where they're getting their primary data from. You have the World Bank conducting their study. There are so many studies, global studies, national studies all over that you can just oppose. But let me tell you the study that is real. It is a study of your neighborhood. Okay, it's a study of your household. It's a study of your disposable capital. It's a study of your expenditure. Everybody has done that study. Take it or leave it. People are getting more and more and more and more, frustrated. People are not having that kind of, feelings they have anymore. If you're not experiencing it, then you're not living in Nigeria. Ditto for your husband, ditto for every other person who's around you. If you're talking about energy costs being high, you must pay for that energy cost. People are paying to be able to watch us. A lot of people are not seeing us, they can't pay. People will need to move around, you need to buy fuel. So what is important for me, and I don't know how long we'll have because there are too many of us on this show, is that this administration, nobody is not under any criticism. The essence of my waking up early morning to come to this studio to make my own contribution is to say, listen, there is no need for us to start talking about crying over spare milk. It is for the federal government to take a last dash to say, let everybody who is supposed to be contributing going forward be consolidated in this 180 days that is left, so that we're handing over a country that there have been technical audits, clear audits of what went wrong or what went right. Somebody was talking about our forex regimes. I mean, if you go to ask the central bank, they also say to you that we needed to apply that fire brigade because that's what that situation required at that point. So let everybody bring their thoughts together, and then let's be able to build a country that is sequenced, that has a flow that can be interrogated.
I like that. A country that is sequenced.
All right. Dr. Muda Yusuf, you are one-time DG, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And if I recall my days, when I had something to do with chambers of commerce across the nation, I want to believe, quite frankly, that you have a good chunk of Nigerian businessmen with you, both manufacturers, producers, importers, exporters, and what have you. Now, in terms of what should be your contribution in the manufacturing sector, what would you require government to do as you expect to have a better economic year 2023? How do we bring your men on board, the manufacturers, the producers, the people in charge of raw materials, the importers and the exporters? How will all of you come to say, look, let us contribute to the development of this country economically? Many Nigerians have complained of energy as the reason why they are not into industries. They're not building, plans for manufacturing and of course the processing of agricultural produce because of lack of energy, or perhaps epileptic energy supply in Nigeria. Yet we have even foreign companies that are operating in Nigeria. Now put all of that into context to say, look, how will these stakeholders in the economic sector make their own contribution in 2023 to ensure, if you like, a smooth economic administration this year?
Well, my view is that the stakeholders are already doing their best. If we talk of resilience in this economy today, this resilience is coming from the private sector, particularly from the SMEs, from the informal sector, micro enterprises. They are doing their utmost best. And we must congratulate them for even surviving this previous year. I don't know what more we want them to do. The critical issue, and which is the function of a government, is to create an enabling environment for them to do more. Over 80% of the jobs in this economy today are created by these people. The bulk of the revenue that Dr. Ni referred to, the bulk of that revenue is coming from the private sector. So they are doing their best. The point I'm making is that we need to fix our macroeconomic environment. I talked about exchange volatility. There's the issue of high inflation. There's the issue of this waste and means, which is creating a lot of liquidity problem. There's the issue of policy inconsistency. There's the issue of insecurity. The private sector is doing its best, but the government should also come to the table with some of these issues. The policy environment needs to be right. We are talking about investment here. I'm not just talking about investment by multinationals. Also investment by our indigenous people,
investment by SMEs, investment by micro enterprises. Do you know how many of them have gone under in the last 1 year? Because they could not cope with the challenges of the environment. So the bigger issue is that we need to create the policy environment that is right. And that was what I was talking about, need to bring about policy reforms. Foreign exchange, in our monetary policy, in our regulatory environment, institutional environment, in our courts.
Dr. Muda Yusuf, we are racing for time now. I'm sorry to interject. Let me quickly bring in Professor Angu. Prof, the 2023 budget has already been accented to. I'm sure the president signed it yesterday into law. So that is that. But the angle I'm looking at now, is this a budget that will serve Nigerians in 2023?
Yes, basically, if you look at where we're coming from, 2022, it's a progression from that. So to that extent, I believe it's a budget that will serve the country. The amount that is being put together for capital expenditure, even though, of course, we wish we could do more, but for the fact that we have so many other things, especially with debt servicing and other things that are taking a chunk of the budget, is something good, because it will give some stability and perhaps give the opportunity for transition to the next government. I think sincerely, as far as I'm concerned, the only thing that is a concern, especially with regards to the budget, is the reality of what we have faced over time. Every year we do budgets and we want to increase the budget and move on and move back. The major issues are the assumptions, that have been made, that the budget was built on. Assumptions were reasonable, but there are concerns. Concern being that we need to take, the difficult decision to manage some things. For example, to reduce this issue of deficit. Deficit is normal, but it is getting too much. Then we also have been able so far, to service our debts. I read just recently that Ghana has suspended some of the payments of some of their either bilateral or multilateral debts. I can't remember for sure. But then we have been able to do that. But the debt servicing is getting too much, which means if we can change some of the assumptions, if we can change some of the realities, reduce, for example, the issue of subsidy, because as it is now, in some parts of this country, here in the north, for example, we buy fuel at exorbitant rates. So the benefit is going to some people, some pockets. So why not, if we need to remove this subsidy, rather than wait for an incoming government to do that, we can reduce this. We can at least have some more revenue for government, rather than this revenue or money going into some private pockets. So I think to that extent, that is something that needs to be done as far as the budget is concerned. And then we need, to ensure that we are putting more into productive activities. We are putting more into things that will facilitate and bring in more infrastructure. Which is the main thrust of this government. We have achieved so much already of diversifying the economy under this regime, certainly, because dependence now is more on non-oil sector than on oil sector. We are increasing revenue. But I think we need to do a lot more. There is strategic growth in revenue initiative of government. I think that needs to be pushed more. I know it is tasking on all of us. It's tasking on the private sector. And Dr. Muda said they have paid enough bills, but I think we need to do more. We need to bring in more revenue so that we can grow this economy, so that this economy can be better. But the processes have to be improved. The ease of doing business should not just be a textbook issue, it should be a reality. Businesses should be encouraged to, especially domestic investment should be encouraged, foreign investment as well. But then, it will improve domestic investment. That will show the resilience of this economy. And I think this economy has shown somehow that we are resilient. If we look at what is happening globally, we are not doing badly. I think we need to just improve and ensure that we are stable. But we need sometimes to take some difficult decisions. We don't have to take decisions that are just palatable, but some difficult decisions have to be taken measures have to be brought in that will stop this issue of round tripping of foreign exchange, which is so much in reality as it is now.
All right, Prof, thank you indeed. What can you tell us about the funding of this budget? I mean, I know that FRS and other agencies have ramped up activities, you know, with respect to generating of funds for the funding of this budget. What's your take? How will you advise government? Because these are projections. How do you advise government with respect to how to fund the budget?
I think it's clearly stated. Government already profiled, highlighted how the budget will be funded. Well, it's the fact is that the more than 50% of it would be funded through loans, through debt. Then, of course, the non-oil sector and independent revenue, internally generated revenue of government would constitute about 6 trillion naira of the total 9.7 trillion that will be available for funding. There's also that conservative allocation from the oil sector at 1.9 trillion, and I'm saying that is, even to my mind, rather optimistic. That is the price, I mean the revenue projected from oil and gas, because across the world there is still that despondency around the projected oil price. You know, I had seen a number of other jurisdictions place their projected earnings from oil at 65, maximum $70 per barrel, you know, for 2023. The National Assembly had moved it up to $75 per barrel. I am not too sure if we would be able to sustain that over a long period of time. Yes, there may be a swing upward at the time, but again, the demand, given what is happening, what is projected to happen in China, which is a major buyer of oil, which determines the price of crude oil. So, to a large extent, I'm not too optimistic of earnings from crude oil as projected, and as, of course, as ballooned by the National Assembly. But I am thinking also that it's time the federal government start considering packaging our national assets for listing, you know, on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. The Nigerian Stock Exchange has shown capacity, has shown resilience, and has shown buoyancy over the last so many years. We are seeing impressive returns over the last 10 years. And if we have national assets, we have the Nigerian the Nigerian ports, the Nigerian airports, and some other assets around that can be listed a certain percentage, even if it's just 20%. The NNPC, you know, now a limited liability company, can actually also be listed as planned. So I think 20% value of these companies can be listed to raise money easily, equity on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, and this would, of course, create a kind of buffer for our fiscal earnings, and would reduce the pressure on debts.
Niyi Akinshijo, thank you. Let's come back to the studio now. Dr. Kengu, part of the Minister of Finance, speech to journalists was to intimate, the pressmen of the development plan for 2015, which is yet to be launched by her ministry. And according to her, that plan is expected to, take the country to about 12 trillion naira and a real GDP of about 7%. Now, I'm wondering, this is a plan, as the name suggests, not a program. But what we do need is a program.
It's a PPA, it's a program, it's a plan, program, and action. And then what you need to do that program before you get to the action, which is where you're going to be getting to your 7% and your 12 trillion, is to build synergies. If you do not build synergies across your MDAs, you're not going to get to that plan. Okay, the moment you do that, to a very large extent, at the monetary policy level, you have achieved it. Remember that there's what they call the Bankers Committee in the central bank, populated, okay, with membership from the private sector or, the deposit money, institutions. Now, if the ministries, our ministry, our NDAs, now have this sequence. I can give you a typical example. Look at NUA, for instance. NUA is under Ministry, of Transportation. But now, what's the relationship between NUA and the Ministry of Water Resources? Now, look at, again, me and Kiwa, we keep talking about science and technology. We keep talking about consumption to production. What's the relationship between the Ministry of Science and Technology and the Ministry of Agriculture? Where you have a lot of those institutions or research agencies that can be able to support food production. Now, what's even the relationship between the NASEMI, okay, and the Ministry of Power? These are the people who are building the solar panels and all that. What's the relationship between Energy Commission, okay, and the Ministry of Agriculture or the Rural Electrification Agency? Now, if you don't build these synergies, you're talking about now, establishing what you call, your alignments, so that your fiscal policy can begin to drive towards somewhere. That's the way to go. If you don't do this, everybody's going to be running in silos. And this is why these expenditures are not seen. This is why outputs are not known. For instance, is the Ministry of Science and Technology. It's supposed to be dealing with food. Now, you have your cash crops, your food crops under the Ministry of Agriculture, and then you have your cash crops under the Ministry of Environment.
Well,
okay? You can go on and on.
I think that time is not on our side, really. I think you've just this point you just made is art, not because I'm interested in science and technology as an individual, but that is what's driving every other sector. There are no tools about it, and this synergy you talked about has been existing for decades. Because if you have been able to, as a reporter, cover all those sectors, you appreciate that. There is no synergy. A technician doesn't want to see an electrician. An electrician does not want to see a chemical engineer. A chemical engineer does not want to know that you read maybe marine engineering. So there's no synergy. That's what is going on. All the professors, they have things upstairs. But then, how do you now get what they have down to the manufacturing sector? It's because of lack of synergy, as you pointed out. But on this note, really, we're going to conclude today's edition of the program, hoping that next time around, we'll also pick up some of these issues and try to dissect them. And so, Dr. Michael Kimbo, development economist, we thank you.
It's a privilege
for waking up with us this morning.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Professor Yushao Anglo, Professor of Finance and Entrepreneurship, Kaduna State University. It's been a pleasure really talking to you this morning, Prof. Yeah, sharing your thoughts on a Wednesday. Thank you indeed for being here. Nini Ekinshiju, financial and investment analyst. Me, of course, will pass for a good one Nigeria analyst. We thank you for showing up from Ibadan. I'm sure I'm going to return to Abuja before the weekend. Thank you, Nini, for being here this morning. Dr. Moda Yusuf, Chief Executive Officer, Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, and former DG, Lagos Chamber of Commerce. We thank you for being with us this morning.
All right, and just before we go, to wish Dr. Okengo, he's right here with us. We are not letting him go. We are going to close Good Morning Nigeria with him. Today is his birthday. Today, January 1st of January. Yes, 1st of January is his birthday. And the producer of Good Morning Nigeria, Lydia Odijochi, is also celebrating her birthday today. And of course, the general manager of NTA News 24 is also celebrating her own birthday. So to all of you lovely people, happy birthday. And that's it on Good Morning Nigeria for today. I am Claire.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
And I am Kirian. I do have a good. I'll see you again tomorrow.